There are so many issues about human rights violations in Iran, and those are some extreme examples of what's been going on. As you mentioned, mass detention, arbitrary arrests and detainment. Torture is also another major one. Women's rights, LGBTIQ rights, those of journalists. There's just the examples just go on, and it just shows how
Absolutely.
dire the situation is already. And it brings us into the next really important question and why we're here today, because in 2019, in response to some of the protests that were happening back in November 2019, Iran started limiting internet use. And why that's important can help shed light on what we were just talking about, human rights issues. So do you mind talking a little bit about what this proposed internet legislation is and why is it controversial?
First of all, I want to emphasize that the bill has been set aside right now, and it's basically as if it never happened because the parliament faced such backlash from the public that they decided against it for now. This doesn't mean that they were thinking about the people. It's just that self-preservation is the most important thing. And when there's this much uproar, self-preservation becomes the thing that's more important than any sort of suppression. So they dial it down for the time being. The bill is titled the User Protection Bill, officially called the Cyberspace Users' Rights Protection and Regulation of Key Online Services. I know that's a mouthful, but basically it's the absolute most radical step the Iranian government has taken thus far to disrupt internet services throughout the country. Disrupting internet is nothing new to Iran. It's happened basically ever since the internet came about. All internet providers are public, and it's all provided by the IRGC, which is the Islamic Republic Guard. And in 2019, we saw this happen during the 2019 protests, which were initially about the prices, but because everything is so related, it's because of governance choices that we see so many issues with the economy. So it ended up being people calling for the removal of the supreme leader. And the total shutdown on the internet was such that basically no one in the country could access any social media platform, communicate in any way. And this created basically a black hole inside the country that allowed the Revolutionary Guard especially, and basically the militia, the so-called police, to do so many egregious things that the public wasn't aware of at the time. There was an estimated 304 deaths of protesters, and that's unheard of even in Iran. And it is because of this that organizations like the UN have continued to bring this issue of internet access up, because it brings impunity with it. And that's a dangerous place, as we know, with countries like North Korea. So this user protection bill is supposed to basically, in the words of the supreme leader, supposed to keep people from being exposed to all that is wrong with how unregulated the internet is, and keep them safe basically from quote unquote misinformation. But in reality, what it's trying to do is to use basically the internet is the last frontier that they haven't shut down completely, and where dissenting views can still be heard. And this bill is to crack down on that more than they already have, because they already have, as I can talk about later.
Well, just to supplement a little bit of what you said. So in 2019, the way that protesters were organizing initially was they were using a Waze app because they're already cut
Yeah,
off from the global internet. So the internet in this 2019 protest was extremely unique because they were organizing publicly. They were telling people where
mhm,
to park their cars on major highways so that it could create roadblocks. And then that eventually turned into this protest that went against the supreme leader because they were frustrated with fuel prices and food shortages and inflation for them at the time. So
absolutely.
that's just kind of to give a little bit of context to what you were talking about. And then the other thing that you mentioned was that it had the word impunity, and that's important because if this bill were to pass, then Iran would be able to continue on with their human rights violations without any surveillance whatsoever and without any consequence to the national and international stages.